I'm going to show you a clip from a video of how the changes in American English from British English were specifically implemented in order to serve the interests of business and empire.
As a linguist, I'm telling you, do not use her as your source. She had 9.5 minutes in her video and she never said or showed any source for information. Almost every sentence she said was verifiably false. A simple example, she said that we removed the term civil servants so that we don't associate government work with serving the people. But if you look up government jobs, the state website literally says civil service. She said that Noah Webster had a part in rebuilding the language after the revolution to remove our ability to talk about class while keeping the elites on top. How did Noah Webster do that? He removed the letter U from the word color. Like, think about what she's saying. It doesn't make sense. If you want more details, I've done a bunch of videos responding to every claim that she makes, starting with the video tag below. Now, I understand there's some confusion about how much we changed terms like PTSD. Now, that's valid, and she showed an example. But remember, this is a stand-up comedy set. It's not a reliable linguistic, psychological, or medical source. But a lot of people do find it confusing. Why have we said so many things like shell shock, soldier's heart, combat fatigue, PTSD? Luckily, there are experts who can tell us about stuff like that. We have records of the symptoms being described that go back as far as the Iliad. But it wasn't until the mid-1800s that people actually started to medically try to address it. When they called it soldier's heart, they thought it was a physical condition linked to a rapid pulse. So they just gave them drugs to calm them down and sent them back into combat. In the World War I era, they called it shell shock because they thought it was literally from the shock of artillery shells and big guns against their brains. They stopped calling it shell shock when they realized it wasn't just people who were near explosions. Still, they would just get a few days rest and sent back to combat. In Europe, they were giving people electrotherapy and hypnosis to try and treat it. World War II comes around, they don't call it shell shock, so they call it combat stress reaction or battle fatigue. And now they start discharging people because of it, but there were still generals that even thought it wasn't real. When the APA created the first diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders, DSM-1 had something about gross stress reaction, and in DSM-2, they said it was adjustment reaction to adult life. And they only had 3 examples of trauma: unwanted suicidal thoughts, military combat, or Ganser syndrome for prisoners who face a death sentence. It wasn't until DSM-3, thanks to research involving Vietnam War, Holocaust, and sexual trauma survivors, that they actually started noticing the link between trauma and post-military and civilian life. And this is when they started using PTSD, and recently they say that it might be as many as 4% of American men or 10% of American women that can get diagnosed with PTSD in their life. And this might cause some people to freak out, but some people are suggesting we change it to PTSI. The research found that calling it injury instead of disorder would make people less likely to view it with a stigma and more likely to get help. Similarly, the way people understand and describe and diagnose autism has changed. They used to think it was schizophrenia, and the only reason it was different than adults with schizophrenia is because children were immature, and they thought it was maybe as little as 1 in 10,000 children with it. DSM-2, they still described it as a type of schizophrenia, but now it's 1 in 2,000 children. DSM-3 finally took it away from schizophrenia and said it might be 1 in 1,400. DSM-4 was the first to call it a spectrum disorder, but it still had some distinct types. With DSM-5, some of those distinct categories like Asperger's, CDD, and PDD-NOS are now all included as ASD, and it might be more like 2% of people and not just children have it. These changes and increases in the rate of diagnoses aren't because Noah Webster wanted to remove your ability to talk about class while strengthening the class divide. It's because we didn't understand it. There's still so many things we don't understand about the human brain. It's taken a long time to understand and accept things like autism and PTSD. There are still cultures where some people are less likely to be diagnosed because of their ethnic or cultural background. Do people, especially the elite, play with words to manipulate your understanding of something? Absolutely. But those examples are not good examples of that. They just reflect our changing understanding of these things and our still limited knowledge of how the brain works. And none of those things were unique to American English. They happen in Canadian, in British, in Irish, Australian, South African, Nigerian English, and they happen in all kinds of dialects from all kinds of languages around the world. And the other creator's claims about American English being rebuilt after the Constitution to do things like that is completely false.